4 years ago, they took the Flosstube world by storm with their love of stitching and their love of samplers. And today, I am going to try and stitch just like them. Hi everybody, this is Melissa. I go by Stitching Liz here on YouTube and also over on Instagram. It would mean so much to me if you would follow me, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment below. So who am I talking about? Who am I going to stitch like? Of course, I am referring to Brenda and the Cereal Starter. Let me introduce them.
I'm Laura. I'm Brenda, and welcome to another edition of Flosstube. We're happy to be here.
Brenda and Laura are delightful, and I've been watching them since the beginning of their Flosstube channel. What they don't know is that for a long time I went through a phase where they were my comfort watch. I would watch them repeatedly, even rewatch their videos sometimes, just to feel comforted by their inspiring, calm, wonderful, entertaining videos. They really are inspiring stitchers, as their Flosstube channel shows. If you haven't watched them, which I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, you should definitely check them out. And of course, they'll be linked below. They are big sampler fans. They love to stitch samplers, and you get to see such amazing things on their channel. I usually stitch a variety of small to medium projects, so I don't stitch samplers normally. So this will be a departure for me. The other thing they're a big fan of is 40 count fabric, 40 count linen to be exact. And I usually stitch on 16 count Aida. So this will be a big departure for me. They are big fans of the Scarlet House. And one of Brenda's favorite samplers that she has stitched is the floral motif sampler. Let me insert a clip of her showing her finish of that.
I had a finish. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know about it. This is housed in a special bag from Stitch Folk. Berries bags. I love them. love them. And this is Floral Motif Sampler by the Scarlet House. You all need to go buy this, get it kitted, whether it's DMC or the called for cottons, and stitch it.
It's beautiful.
Each motif is like a little finish, and you will love it. I guarantee it.
So this is the floral motif sampler by the Scarlet House. This is what it looks like. You've seen Brenda's beautiful finish. What I decided to do was choose a motif off of this sampler to try stitching on 40 count fabric. I reached out to Laura with my idea, and she may think I'm a little crazy for trying to do 40 count when I usually do 16 count Aida. She recommended that I get Zweigart fabric, which I did. And I also got the color she recommended, which is platinum. Now, another thing that they have recently become big fans of are the Auvera Soie 103 silks. I usually stitch with DMC, and I usually stitch with 2 strands. So on 40 count, you would stitch with 1 strand, and this would be 1 strand of silk. Let me insert a little clip of Brenda talking about the 103.
And the 103s are silk. Somebody asked that. It's 103 is a spun silk, and it's by Auvera Soie.
So, based on their love of the 103s, I decided to try and convert the colors from the front of the chart to colors of the Auvera Soie 103s that I could find on 123stitch.com. So I chose this color number 335, this color number 76, this color number 10, this color number 152, and this color number 99. Those are the ones that I'm going to be using to stitch the motifs I'm going to be trying today. So let me show you the fabrics and what they look like, especially compared to what I usually stitch on. So I actually bought 32 count, 36 count, and 40 count in case I have so much trouble with the 40 count that I want to try a smaller count fabric. So this is 32, this is 36, and this is 40. So you can see the difference in the size of the holes in the fabric. This is what I normally stitch on. 16 count Aida. So you can see it's a big difference between what I normally stitch on and what I'll be stitching on today. So the other thing I needed to get was smaller needles, and Brenda's favorite needles are the Peacemakers. So I got size 28 Peacemakers, and just for comparison, this is the 28, and this is what I usually stitch with, which is a 24. And it's also a Peacemaker, which is my favorite as well. So I'm gonna be stitching with this tiny little needle. I'm not even sure I'm gonna be able to thread it. We're gonna give it a try. Okay, so I have my fabric loaded in my hoop. This is the 40 count Zweigart Platinum fabric. And the motif that I'm going to attempt to stitch is this one right here with the pink flowers and the gray vase base and the green leaves. I have a plan for this. If I am able to stitch this, I am going to finish it into a teacup pincushion. So hopefully I'll be successful so that I can make that teacup pincushion. So I'm going to start with the gray vase. So I'm going to use this one. And the neat thing about the 103s is that this top part lifts up and you can unwind the thread from there. So I'm going to unwind a length of thread and give that a cut. So this is definitely thinner than what I'm used to. All right, now I'm gonna try and thread the needle. The Peacemakers are usually pretty easy to thread. Oh, and that went right through. Okay, so I have my needle threaded. Now, the thing that I was not sure about, I have stitched with one thread before on 22 count Aida, but I don't remember how I started. So I got some advice from some stitchy friends about catching the thread on the back and stitching over it. So I'm going to start with the body of the vase so that I have the longest amount of stitches so that I can make a good catch with my thread. So we're going to start in the middle. Okay, so these holes are super tiny, but the thread does go right through. It's really good. So I'm going to leave a little length behind and I'm going to hold that out and try and catch it with my next couple of stitches. But first I have to go back down, and I'm gonna see if I can figure out where that goes. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I have stitched on linen before. I've stitched on 32 count linen. One was in a dark purple and one was in a dark red, but the projects were extremely small. It was definitely hard. I find it hard to focus on the threads and count the 2 over 2. So I usually have to count the threads. And so what I'm going to do now is go up 2 and over 2 and then go down. Okay, and let's get myself situated on the back here again. And let's try going back up. I find it hard to see that middle hole, and when the threads are different sizes, like with linen, I get easily confused. Okay, now let's see, am I catching the thread on the back? Let's make sure I'm catching the thread on the back. Okay, so I have got my first half stitch in. Let me try a couple more stitches and see how I do. I'm actually doing not too bad with seeing the holes. Laura had said when I reached out to her that the Y-guard holes were like the biggest, and that the hand-dyed fabrics have tighter weaves, which is why she suggested this Y-guard. And she's right, and as far as I can tell, that this is something that I can see. So again, I'm doing 1 thread over 2. Okay, and I've got 4 half stitches. So now I'm going to speed this up and see how far I can get. And let's see if I can get some progress done on this motif. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you what I think. All right, let's speed this up. So now that I've done the first 9 half stitches, I'm going back in the other direction, and I'm finding it easier because I've already found the holes. I'm just going back through the holes. What I noticed is that the thread feels thicker going through the second time. The holes are looking a little stretched out by the thread, but what I can't get over is how short this row looks compared to what I imagine it would look like on my regular fabric. You know, I was expecting the row to be like about that long, and look how short it is compared to my finger. So these stitches are much tinier. All right, I'm gonna keep on stitching. Okay, so quick update. I'm on the second row and I'm running into a lot of trouble finding the right holes. I'm not sure if I'm just having trouble seeing the holes because there's threads already in them, or if I'm having trouble seeing the correct number of threads, but I keep feeling like I'm a half a stitch off. One thing that's positive is that this is really easy thread to frog. So I just have to pull out a couple of stitches and it's one easy thread to pull out. But I'm gonna keep plugging away and see if I can get the second row in. Okay, so I'm back to 0. I had to frog everything out that I started. I realized in that second row that something was really off because I was always a half a stitch off. Turns out I think my very first stitch was off, and then a subsequent stitch was also off in the first row. I'm noticing my experience with the 40 count is that the threads of the fabric are so thin and close together that I'm having trouble with skipping a very thin thread and like not even noticing that there was a little hole there. So I have to be a little more careful about counting. I'm gonna start again and try again, just in a slightly different spot on the fabric so I don't have to worry about the holes I already made. It's not a big motif and I have plenty of fabric, so I'm not worried about that. It should be fine. But I'm gonna try starting over and see how that goes, and if I can make some better progress and show you something a little more interesting next time. Okay, so I'm about to start a new strand. I just finished a strand, so I thought I'd give you an update. Things are going much better. So this is where I am. Is anybody else terrified when they have to count over through empty space on linen? I feel like there's no way I can count across empty space in linen without messing it up. I'd rather than counting up over here, I started and went the opposite direction that I would normally go. So I like when things are touching so I know I'm in the right spot. I wonder if that goes away with experience, if you feel more confident in counting when you have more experience, but things are going much better. So we're gonna continue working and maybe get to some flowers in a few minutes. All right, so that's my update for now. Okay, so we are about to put in the last stitches in this motif. And I'm gonna give you some thoughts. First of all, it does get easier to see the 40 count and do the work on the 40 count. It does get easier the more you do it. I did have some trouble with a slub, and I'm sure that happens with all linen. So it's not just that it was 40 count, but it did make for some interesting stitching around the slub. And there is a 1/1 stitch somewhere in here because of it. All right, last stitch. Okay, so that's the last stitch. Let me finish it off in the back and I will show you what it looks like. Okay, so there is my first time stitching 40 count linen with Oversois 103's thread, doing the floral motif sampler by the Scarlet House, all because of Brenda and Laura, Brenda and the Serial Starter. I will say that I find the 40 count it was a little like fun. I don't know if it was because it was new and different and I got excited and it was fun. I found it fun to do, but it is harder than 16 count Aida. On Aida, you can't put your needle in the wrong hole. You can count wrong, but you can't put your needle in the wrong hole because you're not seeing the right hole. The holes are very clear on Aida. Some of these threads are super thin and they're right next to maybe a chunkier thread. So it's very hard to see a hole sometimes. And so you can put your needle in the wrong hole and become off by half a stitch, which is kind of hard to find your mistake and it's hard to fix. I found stitching with the Oversois 103 is delightful. It is a little slipperier than DMC. So like, I don't know if it's because it was one strand or if it's because it's silk, but it did slip off my needle a few times, and I had to rethread my needle a few times. It doesn't really knot very easily, but I did get a few knots while I was working, but they did pull out really easily. They were the kind of like slip knots that come out really easily when you pull on them. So I really enjoyed the thread. The chart of the Scarlet House chart is fantastic, so good. The motif I did overlaps a page, so the top of it's on one page and the bottom of it's on another page. It overlaps in shaded rows by three rows, and I really like that. That appeals to me because I find it hard to switch from page to page, and so when I have those shaded rows, it really helps me out. So I liked that. The chart was wonderful. It's also a beautiful chart. This is going to go so well with my teacup that I'm going to put it in. To give you a size comparison, my hand totally covers this motif, so this is not that big, and I really enjoyed it. It took me a little while to do. It was brand new to me. It takes longer for me to stitch on linen, but I feel very excited about it. So thank you so much to Brenda and Laura for your inspiration. It was such a pleasure stitching just like you. Thank you so much to everyone for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.